Today is January 14th, 2014. Welcome to episode 75 of Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. Visit us at letstalkbitcoin.com for our daily guest blog, all our past episodes, and of course, tipping addresses. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today we're talking about legitimacy and permission in the world of Bitcoin. Rob Benegali is the founder and CEO of Glyph, an application that lets you securely communicate and until recently send or receive Bitcoins as easily as text message, no address required. Apple's App Store had other opinions on the matter. Rob shares a little of the history behind Bitcoin in the App Store and explores a little of the thinking that might be behind this approach. But first, we've got the final panel from the Las Vegas Inside Bitcoins event from December 11th, 2013. This panel discusses the legitimacy of Bitcoin from a variety of perspectives. I think you will enjoy it. This panel features Izzy Klein, Robert Cho, Adam Ettinger, Eric Benz, Andreas M. Antonopoulos, and was moderated by Arden Lakosovic. Enjoy the show.
Here comes our final panel. I don't know if anybody's been over to the Social Gaming Summit, which was taking place over on the side, but Arden Lukovic, who's the founder of Bitmarkers, has done a couple presentations over there. He did a Bitcoins 101 session actually earlier for the gamers. So we've got him back now. He also does financial analysis for Aria Casino, so he's got a lot of experience. He's going to corral our panelists, choreograph this panel, and take it home for us, because this is the last one, right? Let's make it good, guys. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Yeah. All right, yeah, thanks. And I think I'd like to start off with just a round of applause for Stuart and everything he's done here with Inside Bitcoins. It's been a lot of fun, and I know we've all sort of grown our professional network just being around other people as crazy as we all are about Bitcoins. At least makes me believe that this is going somewhere and I'm not just crazy and alone. So thank you for that. I'd like to introduce our great panelist. We were speaking over lunch and kind of going back and forth already with our point of views. So it should definitely be very interesting. We have Andreas with Route 11. We have Adam, who's a partner at Strategic Counsel Corp. Eric with ZipZap, Izzy with Podesta Group, and Robert Cho with Second Market. And so we kind of have everyone, lobbyist groups, legal, and I'll let you guys go ahead and make short introductions of yourselves. So let's start on this end.
Just very briefly, I'm a principal at the Podesta Group. My name is Izzy Klein. I've been paying attention to the virtual currency space for quite a while. Have a few former clients, including Robert at Second Market, and a few other folks in this space, and look forward to hearing what the rest of my co-panelists have to say, and have really enjoyed the conference thus far. Thanks, Stuart.
Hi, I'm Bobby Cho. I'm a vice president at Second Market, which is a broker-dealer registered in New York. And I'm also the spearhead Bitcoin trading at Second Market, along with my group also is the authorized participant to the Bitcoin Investment Trust, or the BIT as we like to call it. And I'm really excited to be here.
My name is Adam Ettinger, and I'm an attorney. I counsel technology companies, especially in the startup phase, pre-public, and more since middle of last year, Bitcoin companies in different sectors, whether it's mining, payments. I'm happy to see a lot of my clients were here this year. And going farther, it's just been a lot of fun. I'm also represent a number of investors that have become very active this year in the Bitcoin space. Most of my work is in the Silicon Valley and some in Los Angeles.
Hi, my name is Eric, for VP BizDev for ZipZap. I'm currently focusing on Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia markets, more for the developing areas. What we're doing with ZipZap is we're growing our global cash payment network. You guys probably remember us when we were operating in the States with BitInstant. So we're kind of growing our model into different markets right now. I've been kind of really traveling a lot, Baltics, Europe, Africa as well. So a lot coming from us starting from January. So really excited about it.
Hi, I'm Andreas Antonopoulos. I'm a co-host on Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm writing the O'Reilly book for Bitcoin. And I'm very interested in Bitcoin in the developing world and the other 6 billion.
Since you last spoke and you're with the developers world, how has Bitcoin's origin from cryptography groups shaped and impacted the trust relationships currently inside of the community? How would you say?
I think Bitcoin really revolutionizes trust by changing trust from a model where trust is achieved through exclusion of access, which is the traditional financial model, to one where trust is enabled through computation. And what that means is you can create an open access network where anyone can connect, innovate at the edges, and have immediate access to a world economic network with full trust in the system. Trust is decentralized, it's peer-to-peer, and it's given directly to empower the individual. And that model is radical, it's revolutionary, and it's going to change the world.
Just curious, who here, obviously there's financial reasons too, but who here, why is trust the most important reason that you are following Bitcoin with openness? It's very interesting. Any other? So I'd say the next topic would be legitimacy and where the current state of that would be, and I'll pass it over to Robert.
So I think we're in a really interesting phase right now, as regulation here in the U.S. is really yet to be seen, which I think will happen in Q1 of next year, Q2, as kind of the regulators wrap their heads around it. But regarding legitimacy, I think that what we're seeing is kind of a weeding out of the illegitimate players from maybe a year or two ago to more the legitimate players. I think it's just a natural progression of the market along with the players involved. And I think that we need that to occur for real, the institutional money, the institutional guys to really get involved to kind of bridge that gap.
Any other comments?
I was thinking about it more today, that I remember in 1994, 1995, as the internet began to commercialize. It went through very much the same sort of cycle into legitimacy as it went into the mind space. The number one ISP in the country at the time, and it was one of my first clients, was Netcom, which I think had 100,000 or even less than that as the internet started to open up, and was still the number one ISP in 1996 with half a million accounts. And what was happening is so many of the people that saw the vision for the internet, the openness, the capability of what this platform would do and what it could enable, started to meet more with venture money, started to meet more with a different professional entrepreneurship. Some of it merged, some people got rolled over. But as people became more aware and as all the other processes actually got to get involved, such as regulatory controls, and us trying to figuring out how it's all going to work at the end of the day, and people became more accustomed to it. It's not so much the legitimacy of the platform, whether it's the internet platform, TCP/IP, or Bitcoin protocols and everything goes with it, but the entire ecosystem of users, of companies that are moving it forward, and of the investors that help them. And in the last month, we're seeing that really, and this does remind me of sort of 1995, when Kleiner Perkins financed Netscape. It wasn't the first Mosaic browser, and unfortunately, some of the first innovators weren't there soon afterwards. But we're seeing this again with Andreessen Horowitz, which is really a thought leader and a lead investor in the Silicon Valley. It's one of the firms that other firms watch, being interested in this, adding partners to move towards it, which was, they added one new partner just on the 9th. Accel Partners coming into Circle. It raises the bar in many ways, but it also is going to give confidence to the entire network. It is something like that may help to fix the number one complaint I've heard here, which is, hey, our companies don't have access to banks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and legitimacy is definitely goes hand in hand, and even the largest companies in Bitcoin, we've seen nearly a 180 flip of how they were probably a year ago and how now. One thing that's always been important with Bitcoin as well has been the transparency of the network. And one of the hottest topics of recent has been Bitcoin address blacklisting, KYC and AML compliance hurdles, and most specifically companies such as coin validation. Is there anyone who any of this directly affects, I guess, ZipZap or Andreas?
Sure. Well, first, slightly on the previous topic, I reject the very concept of legitimacy as something that we should seek, need, or require in Bitcoin. Legitimacy is a word bandied around by the most corrupt, morally bankrupt forces on this planet to try to smear Bitcoin. We don't need legitimacy, we didn't ask for permission, and we don't require the approval of anyone. Bitcoin is here, it works, and the forces that ask us or try to give us legitimacy are themselves morally bankrupt, so why should we care? First. Secondly, on the issue of coin validation, these attempts to somehow fix the Bitcoin protocol to prevent theft will not only fail, but will reintroduce at the core of the protocol the types of controls and levers of power that have traditionally used to corrupt and influence the currency. Those are exactly the forces we pushed out of the core of Bitcoin, and we don't need them. In fact, they would have a corrosive influence from the very beginning, and they would spell the doom of Bitcoin, the currency. They won't work, and I'll tell you why they won't work. When HSBC launders money through Bitcoin, their coins won't get blacklisted. WikiLeaks coins will. Greenpeace coins will. The forces of dissent within oppressive governments will have their coins blacklisted. But guess what? HSBC could sue whoever creates that blacklist and terminate their operation. If we have blacklists within Bitcoin, we are introducing a counterparty risk that introduces the entire legal system back into a system that's based on trust between two parties, only two parties. The only requirement to redeem a transaction on Bitcoin is that you have the necessary code to solve the equation. That's it. That's where Bitcoin gets its legitimacy from.
So that's definitely where the community's thoughts have been from the start, but especially with companies like Second Market, there does have to be the proper interaction between the two financial worlds. Zip, you're in the middle of that too. What's your thoughts, especially with BitInstant? You guys have been there, and
yeah. So we've gone through some of the hurdles and everything else with compliance and regulation, and the approach that we're taking is obviously every customer that comes through us and using cash to get Bitcoin. We do the KYC process and the onloading with the exchanges. We don't hold any funds. We're not an exchange ourselves, but we are enabling a easier, quicker way in which cash can get into exchanges from consumers, the everyday consumer, the shopkeeper in Africa, needing to get Bitcoin, or emerging markets that need that quick access for 100 euros or 50 euros or 10 euros. We're really targeting that mainstream consumer adoption, really. We can talk about financial instruments and derivatives and Forex and all that stuff, which is great, but we really need to look at what Bitcoin can do for emerging markets. We really need to focus on how we can improve the economies in Africa and Asia and all over the world, really. Again, we're taking a stance on remittance ourselves. So here we are as a nation, giving these developing nations billions and billions and billions of dollars of aid every single year, yet we charge them billions and billions of dollars of remittance fees. So in this equation, something doesn't make sense, and that needs to stop right now, period. When you send money, say you send $100 to Kenya right now, that $100 you're going to have to spend, $40 to send it? This person receiving the money in Kenya, imagine if they were receiving $40 more every time you sent $100. This is the market that needs to be flipped upside down on its head. Big time. Seriously. If there was one area of Bitcoin that we could target right now and all make a massive change globally, it's in the remittance market everywhere.
Yeah, you think the other 6 billion who are dealing with that kind of stuff care about legitimacy? Yeah, exactly. They care about the fact that they're getting ripped off by international corporations that are sucking money out of the system from the poorest people in the world.
Isn't that legitimacy? In other words, knowing that I'm going to get what somebody sends me and I'm going to get the whole amount, to me that's a legitimate transaction. I mean, maybe it's a semantic issue. I don't think that any industry should own the word. And I think that, if anything, because legitimacy or trust can get coded into Bitcoin, can get coded into that, I mean, that's the real beauty, I think, of it. And also the opportunity to give people the amount that they want. In other words, there are a number of people this week that are showing off third-party signatures for escrow. Ultimately, it's a trust mechanism, in a way.
Right, algorithmic trust.
Right.
But that's not how the word is used most of the time when we're hearing these discussions. It's used in reference to control over the destination of your money. It's used in reference to political control over the recipients. And that's a whole different ballgame. I totally agree with you. If we're talking about transactional legitimacy, that's a matter of simply verifying the execution of the output. That is legitimacy in the algorithm. That is trust right in the algorithm. It doesn't involve any counterparties. That's the magic of Bitcoin. But that's not how the word is used most of the time in these discussions.
Shop smart with your Bitcoin and get 3% back with Gift. On Gift, you can get gift cards with Bitcoin. Choose from over 200 retailers, including Target, GameStop, Gap, and more. Gift makes it easy to shop on Android or on the web. There are no additional fees, and when you shop with Bitcoin, you get 3% back. Go ahead, try Gift. That's GYFT.com.
The BitGive Foundation is a nonprofit charitable giving organization leveraging the power of the Bitcoin community to improve public health and the environment worldwide. Help us demonstrate the significant impact of Bitcoin in addressing these critical issues on a global scale. Support international giving in Bitcoin. Please visit our website at www.bitgivefoundation.org. That's www.bitgivefoundation.org.
So especially when you try and apply to Bitcoin now to real-world uses, there does have to usually be some sort of center of trust, since a community is coming around to purchase goods and products from each other. Specifically, the closure of Silk Road has increased Bitcoin legitimacy directly after, and we saw that with the price and with mainstream media. But the underlying frame trust work, especially with that community, was damaged. I still feel, from what I see, it still is damaged. And also, Bitcoin's known for complex scam tactics. So how do these two groups mix? Izzy, let's start with you.
So I understand Andreas' point earlier, but I will say that there are legitimate fraud and other issues that will keep policymakers, regulators, et cetera, up at night, and law enforcement. And those are issues that are going to have to be tackled by the community at large. And they're going to have to be tackled not by displaying the kind of trust that entrenched power needs to see, but by telling a narrative. And I remember a speaker on one of the previous panels talking about we're looking forward to the day when the invention of Bitcoin by a software developer 10 years ago won't be the first thing that's mentioned in every story. And I agree with that. I think that there's a whole world of not just Bitcoin itself, but other virtual currencies and alternate payment rails that are being developed across the globe that is an amazing alternative to the existing payment rails and a lower cost alternative. That's democratizing. That's good for people in the third world. That's good for everybody. But that narrative is not necessarily being told in Washington. There were a couple of hearings that you all, I'm sure, watched. Many of you probably watched. That's only the beginning. There will be more hearings, and there will be policy written either by the regulators or by the legislators that will affect this industry and this community. And getting out in front of it, explaining how this all works to people is important. Most people don't understand what a Bitcoin is. Most people don't understand how our existing payment systems work.
You brought
up Visa
up
or MasterCard. They don't understand it.
So you brought up an interesting point, and I feel a lot of people, especially with prominent people as yourself, we always want your opinion on how did the Senate hearings go. Where do you see that direction? What's 2014 looking like from that angle? And let's take Adam for all right. Okay.
Well,
maybe a little further.
I don't want
into
to
that.
filibuster, but I will say, just very briefly, and then I'll pass it on to Robert, that I think that there will be more hearings. I think that the hearings that were held this past month were actually very positive. I couldn't imagine them having gone better, but one of the hearings had one senator sitting there the whole time, and the other had 4 or 5. So the level of participation is not particularly high right now, but it will be. And I think that that's something that you need to keep in mind. I mean, things just don't magically happen in Washington. Congress is a stimulus response organization. Something happens like Silk Road, hearings are held. Silk Road is busted by law enforcement, hearings are held.
How do you think the Chinese news is now? How's that affected it?
Well, let me actually. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to pass it on over here.
Yeah, I'll touch on the Senate hearings. Us at Second Market, we feel like we're pretty in tune with what's going on down in D.C. The tone from the beginning of the year to the end of the year has shifted, I think, and I think we all agree that it's gone from kind of a negative tone to more of a maybe not so positive, but maybe more, okay, let's learn how this can help us. I think that's the way that it's going, and I think that's the way that it'll continue to go. And to kind of touch on, I think it was FinCEN, the woman of FinCEN, I can't remember her name, but she had mentioned that still the U.S. dollar is still the best way to money launder. It's still the best way to operate in the black market or whatever you want to call it. Bitcoin, it's pseudo-anonymous. I think that we can all agree that there comes a point where it's going to exist, to touch on Silk Road. Something like that will exist in every currency, every denomination. It's unavoidable, but it's what can we do to get past that and to bring it to kind of more of a legitimate light.
Very interesting.
Just to add to that, I mean, the problem here is the financial services are completely broken. I mean, we know that. We've labeled that. This is why we're here. This is why we're speaking. I just have a couple notes here, but regulation is a necessary friction. I mean, obviously we're talking about that. And, we need smart regulation that doesn't stifle innovation. We need to really make sure that we maintain innovation without stifling it and then moving it into other markets, which is exactly what you guys are doing here. And again, there's no such thing as 100% anonymity with Bitcoin. We believe in privacy, not anonymity. So this is kind of where we're heading with that. And again, compliance is also a competitive advantage, and staying out of jail is also a competitive advantage, right? So, if you do the compliance right, you'll reduce fraud, yada yada. It's a real. It doesn't need to be complicated. We're not reinventing the wheel. We just need to kind of make sure that we're staying within that regulatory framework.
If I can follow up on that. So one thing I've always had to deal with in my practice is new technologies run into old laws, and there are the entrepreneurs that will ignore it and run past. There are the entrepreneurs that have to run head on. And then there's this unanticipated hit. So it went from trying to get, I was representing what was the number one firewall company in the United States in, God, I'm starting to sound old, 1997, and we couldn't get the products out. The Department of State is the one, and you have to go through this rigmarole back then, and basically it was on the same technology list as nuclear equipment. And to try and explain that it's a firewall was a terribly complex thing to do. And the bureaucracy that was there was not, didn't have the facility to be able to keep up in real time or even respond to it in any kind of measurable way. And we would have lost the lead as individual entrepreneurs, as people trying to secure the internet, as people trying to make businesses and individuals safer, which is not government's objective. At the time, I actually came up with the crazy idea, wait a second, maybe I can just call somebody who is in the State Department. I ended up calling the two senators from California. One of them later wrote me he was too busy impeaching the president at the time, as I recall. Congresswoman. Two congresspeople in the right jurisdictions. But the congresswoman from Palo Alto ended up helping to explain, and we were able to move things forward, and ultimately the law changed. There was another time when Church of Scientology sort of proved by its litigation that state law could cause the ISPs and other internet providers to be liable on state law. Well, that would have shut down most of what we know of as the internet.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't shut it down. It would just move it abroad, and that's the real issue we should be talking about here. The Senate hearings were successful because they backed off for a tiny bit, and I'm so glad Tony Gillespie was there to do a spectacular job in talking about jobs and votes and growth opportunities. But the truth is that if the U.S. cracks down and regulates Bitcoin, Bitcoin doesn't lose. The U.S. loses because all of the innovation and all of the jobs are going to go elsewhere. This is a new world we're living, and you can scream at the meteor and its trails, but if you're a dinosaur, you're going to get it.
And very much in support of that, the one thing that I heard during the Senate hearings, which I was not expecting to hear, is again and again the people testifying saying that they recognized that they didn't want to, how much veracity in their statements we'll find out, but that they didn't want to stifle it, that they didn't want to see it go overseas.
I mean, this is really an issue about jobs and innovation, and the thing is, Bitcoin enables innovation at the edges without permission. So if the innovation can't happen here, it's going to move abroad. And to the point of whether you need to stay out of jail or deal with regulators or the Silk Road issue, listen, the greatest heist in the history of humanity happened in 2008, and no one went to jail. And right now, we're dealing with regulators who are chasing out around Silk Road, which is like a gnat, while they could take the bus 40 blocks south and go to the corner of Water and Wall Street and find the real crooks who have complete immunity because they own the banks. Now, I'm not interested in discussing regulation from the perspective of people who are absolutely corrupt, completely bought off, and are operating in a system that's rigged from top to bottom. The whole point of Bitcoin is to be able to move outside of that system. Here, it's difficult to have that discussion, but trust me, the other 6 billion know exactly what we're talking about. Because for them, this is a matter of life and death. It's not about regulation. It's about corrupt and oppressive governments. So we're having this little side discussion in the U.S. about whether we should apply strange, antiquated laws. Guess what? Those laws are there to protect incumbents from competition. When is the last time one of these regulators protected consumers? I don't think that's a legitimate conversation. I don't think that's the way we should be looking at this.
So since we've kind of touched on the now in sort of the past, and I think rolling out of that, let's start with Andreas again, is where do you see the future of these trust relationships, especially if the community did stay at its core values even more than it predictably looks like it will? Where do you see the next 5 years, 10 years? What's the end goal? Yeah.
I think we've reached a point where Bitcoin is now global. It's got the attention of the world, and it's, at least from external forces, it's pretty much unstoppable. The only question is if we're going to fail from some kind of internal bug that disrupts Bitcoin. But guess what? They're going to be really surprised the next morning when we bootstrap another currency on the same platform, because Bitcoin isn't a currency. Bitcoin is a technology platform that allows a distributed asset ledger. It's one of the most astonishing inventions of the century, and it cannot be uninvented. And if they spoil this currency, we'll boot another one and another one after that. And I would suggest next one we put in strong anonymity and coin join in every transaction in every wallet by default, always on, can't turn it off. Because that's the kind of battle we're in right now. We made the mistake on the internet of not applying Tor from the very beginning, and now we've got the NSA like a parasite on the global brain sucking all the information up. We need to learn from that mistake, and we need to not repeat it. This is not just an issue for us, because at the same time that the NSA is studying the blockchain, and trust me, they are, we're going to have every oppressive government in the world tracking every dissident down, dragging them out of their houses, torturing and killing them because they made a transaction on the Bitcoin network. And for those people, this stuff is really damn important. So I'm interested in looking at how we can strengthen the core infrastructure of Bitcoin, enable strong anonymity, and then let the protocol alone and do all of the innovation in the layers above. We've already got a winning solution. It's worked perfectly fine. And I want to see as little done to it as possible from now on.
To stay on the future, so to legitimize Bitcoin, I know a lot of us are starting Bitcoin businesses, and you guys obviously have. What legitimizing events do you feel needs to take place, or do you foresee? Let's even say for something such as second market, because you guys are.
I think for the future, looking forward, basically, I think that for me and I think for second market, basically, my background's fixed income. I'm a fixed income trader, and I got into Bitcoin in January of this year. And basically, from my perspective, I think it's basically bridging the gap between traditional investors and kind of the new technology that we see as Bitcoin, or the innovation. And we've done that through the Bitcoin Investment Trust, the private fund that we had launched in September. I think that a gentleman had mentioned something about Fidelity and Fidelity allowing people to basically allow their clients to invest in Bitcoin. Well, that's not exactly correct. Basically, you have to be an accredited investor, accredited individual, and you can invest through your self-directed IRA through Fidelity, as we partnered with them to invest in the fund. And so, in my perspective, I think the future is continuing to bridge the gap between the institutional folks and the kind of the technology folks, and just kind of helping manage that process.
I think it's going to be innovation and permeation and variation. It's sort of the applications of Bitcoin are a lot like a genetic algorithm, and right now what we're seeing is so many different people taking it and figuring out for themselves how to use it. Not just how to create a new business around it, but how to use it. I remember one of the better stories I read was a PBS story about a farmer who found, and there's no reason this man should have stumbled upon Bitcoin, but ended up solving, an American farmer, many of his issues with how he has to run his business. As more and more people get involved in it, in more and more countries, more and more creations, more and more innovation happens in different directions, it permeates, and we begin to find the story about how it changes things for the better. And this is very true of the internet, too. Begins to far outweigh the stories of, you could lose your this, or somebody could be doing that, or this Ponzi over there. And people begin to see it for themselves, ultimately.
Do you feel that the current cycle of media is more legitimizing? Obviously, a lot of people feel more any press is good press, but typically the technology is not reported on. The benefits aren't necessarily reported on. It's always price. This guy's now a millionaire, and huge busts, black markets. How do you guys feel the media has played a role?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that the media has to sell papers and they have to get viewership. I think that all that news out there for the people in this room, that they understand that a lot of it is not true or quasi-true. But I think they're trying to do the best that they can in terms of trying to portray it to the average customer or the average viewer. So I would say that I think that it's shifting a little bit, but still, the tone is a little bit negative. The tone isn't so positive. But hopefully we'll see a shift in that towards the beginning of next year.
Cool. I think it's going to be improved the same way. Up to now, when a news outlet has a story about Bitcoin, I've seen either a picture of the Silk Road mastermind or Bitcoins. Bitcoins, those coins. And they're still showing coins. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is there's not a lot of heads to show. They like showing talking heads. And right now, they don't have a lot of talking heads to show. With Tesla, you'll notice they don't show the car nearly as much as they show Elon Musk. And when we have those innovators, whether it's people helping other people in the third world as they've never been helped before, or it's going to be a Silicon Valley company or a Tennessee company or a Singaporean company or an Argentinian company that has innovated in a wonderful way that ends up making its users pleased and happy or wealthier. Those heads are going to be in the press, and that will improve the quality of the story coming out.
And Adam, don't you think that shift is changing, where it's the faces of the Barry Silberts of the world, the Jeremy Allairs of the world, and the Andreessen Horowitz of the world?
You and I live in a very small world. Most people are not reading the newspapers that have, What I'm saying is, in the public mind sphere, I don't think that they actually could pick out Mr. Allaire in a lineup, or even Andreessen. Elon, probably.
Yeah, I don't think the media per se, I mean, yes, okay, good press, bad press, everybody knows about Bitcoin, it's getting a lot more public awareness, that's great, but they have not done justice by not giving information to the mainstream community and users everywhere about the social benefits of Bitcoin. We can talk all day long about social benefits and what it can do for all the emerging markets, and especially with new merchants and selling goods online and, et cetera. So I really think that the media outlets, and, it's partly our job as well to educate these media outlets in order to bring them up to speed and make sure that the information they're putting out there is harping on about these social benefits, because it is a very important area that needs a lot of focus right now. So the VCs in the room and the VCs that have been here, we're talking about all the financial instruments and all the money being pumped into the ecosystem. But what about pumping the money into the ecosystem to actually improve the life of all these other 6 billion people in the world? It's extremely important, and I think that as far as a use case to, as we say now in this talk, legitimize Bitcoin, it's needed 100%.
One of the
can I have a say on
yeah,
that?
and I'll start with you. So one of the previous groups discussed self-regulating as well. So Andres, what's your thoughts on including that?
I'm actually a member of the media, so I'd like to just touch on that for just a second. I think there's an interesting possibility that Bitcoin enables the kind of microtransactions that can give a breath of life to a dying medium. Because right now, it's no coincidence that the corporate mainstream media are obsessing with trivialities and delegitimizing Bitcoin. They're on a mission. They're on a mission to maintain a status quo that allows them to continue to publish trivialities. So what's happening right now is not that the media is delegitimizing Bitcoin. The media is delegitimizing themselves. And we have the opportunity with Bitcoin to enable the kinds of alternative media that an entire generation of young people are now depending on to get real, important information about the world that's not about the Kardashians. So let the media continue to do their trivialization, because quite honestly, there's another 6 billion people out there who are going to adopt Bitcoin. Bitcoin adoption is the most important thing. Get it out there, get it to other people, and keep moving it forward so that more and more people can experience it and use it. And let the media continue to trivialize and delegitimize themselves.
Very powerful.
Your question, sorry, I can talk about the other topic, but I just wanted to touch on media.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, especially it's interesting how Bitcoin really, it helps rich people, it helps poor people, it helps everyone in between. It's amazing on massive transactions as well as very small ones. One of the previous groups, they talked about self-regulation. So I guess maybe let's move over to Izzy. What's your thoughts on Bitcoin self-regulation?
Well, look, I think that, first of all, just on the media point, I mean, there's a level of bravado, I think, among some folks in this community that is warranted, because you all are innovating at a level that I don't think regular people understand, and so that's awesome. However, because they don't understand it, doesn't mean that you can just dismiss them. Because some of them are going to be regulating Bitcoin, whether we like it or not. Some of them are going to be making other policies that shut off avenues that Bitcoin should be able to travel down.
I don't disagree with that.
Let me just finish for a second. And I think that the better job this community does at educating both the mainstream media and the specialty media, as well as policymakers around the world, not just in Washington, the healthier, more open, and more vibrant the future for Bitcoin will be. As far as self-regulating organizations in particular, there are a number of them for lots of different industries. I don't know at what point the new one that was just announced today and some of the others in this industry, I don't know how far developed they are, but those could be very important in that education process. And I think that to the extent that resources and efforts can be made to develop principles, to develop kind of a guiding post for how this community works, wants to work, should work, that's important. And it's important to allay concerns by law enforcement, by regulators, by policymakers. So I think that I applaud the folks in the room who are looking into that, because I think it's a really important step for an industry that's growing.
Can I briefly respond to that?
Yeah.
Just a second. So I think it's absolutely important to do the work of education, and that's been my main focus for the last 2 years. I think it's also important to highlight the broad diversity of opinion and personalities and look beyond sort of the English-speaking white male world that Bitcoin has been characterized as. We can all respond to sensationalist media stories by setting the record straight, by demanding corrections and retractions if necessary, and providing them the facts, and also regularly speaking to journalists to help them understand the interior technology of Bitcoin, but also explain the narrative of a system that can bring hope to millions and billions of people around the world. That narrative, rather than the Bitcoin as being a den of thieves, pornographers, and terrorists. It's really important to do that. But it's also important to do it from a perspective that's broader than simply the North American continent. I founded an organization called BitcoinPressCenter.org, and I'm just going to do my little quick pitch here, which is a way for people to find journalists who speak 24 different languages, experts from around the Bitcoin community from every other country except for North America. And that site is getting hundreds and hundreds of media requests. So I agree with you absolutely. We need to bring that message, and it's a message of hope, and it's an important narrative. I'm just saying the delegitimization by media will continue to happen. It's not an accident. It's absolutely deliberate.
And before we run out of time, apologize. Does anyone have a question for any of our panelists? There you
go. BitcoinPressCenter.org. Thank you.
Here, one sec.
Andreas in particular, but all of us here at the conference tend to have a very confrontational stance towards regulation. That's like kind of the way we lean. But I think there's another way we could look at this, which is how do we co-opt the same organizations that we are actually scared of? I mean, a lot of this is coming out of fear and anger. So the question is primarily to the people who have financial background. What are the services or what are the things that Bitcoin can do for the large financial organizations that are going to make them greedy enough to want to be part of the play?
And also, let's try and keep the answers down to like a sentence or 2 sentences, concise.
I'll do my best, but we don't work together, but I'd like to pitch what he's doing in a way, because it's hard to say, but it answers the question perfectly. Ultimately, he's creating a fund, or his company's created a fund, that ultimately auto workers using their 401ks will be able to invest into Bitcoin as part of retirement planning. And if, in fact, that investment ends up being more stable than some of the retirement programs that have proved unstable, he can only do that by very much co-opting, I believe, both the regulations and the banking systems that currently are in place. I don't think that's the only thing that can be done with Bitcoin. I don't think that it's, but I think it complements, very much so.
Campaign finance law, actually being able to donate to political campaigns with Bitcoin is going to be a very, very important milestone, because then you can co-opt them from the inside. The other one is talking to organizations like the Consumer Financial Protection Board, who actually have the best interests of consumers in mind, and persuading them why Bitcoin empowers consumers and allows them to protect their assets much more effectively.
And also just comment on that, it'd be very interesting to have your political contributions also increase in value 4,000% that year, because they'll probably be a little more interested in it. But
first off, I wanted to thank everybody for this panel. This was a really interesting panel. My question is very quick. Does China have the right to regulate Bitcoin?
So I think the beauty of Bitcoin is it's regulated by an algorithm, and that's owned by no one. So that's the best regulation you can get, because it's predictable, it's consistent, and it's not subject to corruption and influence.
I do think the question, though, is you can obviously add layers on top of Bitcoin itself. Maybe, Izzy, would you have thoughts on what do you ask?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that question in a second. I mean, do they have the authority? Well, they've given themselves the authority because they're a legitimate government, and they're going to do it. And I don't know that there's anything that folks can do about it other than pull out of China, and so that's an option. In terms of the layers of regulation, I mean, I think we all have talked about this throughout the entire conference. I mean, there are kind of 3 levels of regulation that we should be concerned about here. The first is the kind of straight law enforcement, fraud, illicit activities, et cetera, that are done via the Bitcoin community. The second are straight rules of the road for payments, for investors, investor protections, for consumer protections, et cetera. But then the third is something that we haven't really touched on too much, and that's taxable authority, and how the IRS treats large increases in your cash portfolio based on Bitcoin increases. And I think that's a very legitimate concern that a lot of folks are going to start to have as investments in Bitcoin in the U.S. increase. So that's a longer answer than you want, but there it is.
Okay, I would just like to ask, what are some of your favorite Bitcoin charities or services for charities in general?
That's a great topic because we didn't really touch on transparency. One of the great features of the public ledger and blockchain is that you can enable radical transparency for charitable organizations. And that kind of policy is infectious because it will put pressure on organizations of public responsibility, including publicly listed companies, to implement radical transparency for their public accounting. I think that would be a very powerful force.
So one thing that I haven't heard addressed at this conference is the idea that Bitcoin is a huge creator of wealth at the moment. I could see it becoming a destructor of wealth in the terms of just accelerating possible collapse of fiat currencies. Is that not a cause for concern for, say, the other 6 billion or the person who just doesn't know how to open up Bitcoin wallet and get in early enough?
Yeah, this is William Gibson who had the great line, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. And
Nicholas Negroponte of the MIT Media Lab said that. Yeah. Nicholas Negroponte said that?
Did he? Thanks.
It's a good quote,
it's a good correction.
for sure. Yeah.
No,
It remains a good quote.
Well, there's no maps for these territories. That's what Gibson. In any case, no, I think it's to a certain degree it's unavoidable. And there's always been disparity of wealth. The question is how much can we try to avoid the kinds of disparities we don't like? If, in fact, Bitcoin causes the disparity of wealth that you're talking about, it's certainly not going to be straight along traditional lines. And if it brings more wealth and capability of ease of financial well-being to more people, then okay. Because it won't be avoidable in any case.
Bitcoin's going to get adopted in the places where it has the highest utility versus the local currency. And in most places in the world, they have some really, really crappy currencies that are, we think Bitcoin has volatility. Our volatility is going up. Most of these currencies is volatility, but it's going all the way down. So these are problems that are really kind of first world problems, if you like. For many of the nations where Bitcoin may have a tremendous impact, the real question is, can we support it without electricity? Can we support it without continuous access to the blockchain? And we need to down-tech Bitcoin in order to make it accessible to more and more people. But for them, it has an impact, and quite honestly, their currencies are really much, much worse.
Yeah, especially getting involved internationally with Bitcoin. The more companies that I talk to from different places, one, for instance, is the Caribbean. They have the Barbados dollars, and it's pegged to the dollar, and so when we pump money, they have to pump money as well, and that money is not backed by anything, and actually they went from a high credit rating to absolute junk dollars, so the exchange there wants to just siphon the rest of the value out of it. But
and what is our money backed by exactly?
The good faith in the American government.
Right.
So
nothing, right? Okay.
We're gonna finish this with a round of applause for our wonderful panelists.
EasyDNS is the Swiss Army knife for your domain names, helping meet their customers' individual needs since 1998. EasyDNS has been an outspoken critic of SOPA and CISPA. EasyDNS was an early supporter of Bitcoin, and now they are proud to sponsor this show. Do business with a company that shares your values. Get a 13% discount when you pay with Bitcoin. Go to bitcoin.easydns.com and be sure to use discount code LTB. Hi, Stephanie here. Would you like to turn your book into an enthralling audiobook? Need a persuasive commercial to promote your company? How about a narrator for your explainer video? Here's where I can help. I'm a freelance voiceover artist, and since 2009, I've lent my voice to dozens of audio projects. To hear some examples of my work, check out my website, smvoice.info. If you like what you hear, I'd love to be the voice of your next project. Get in touch at smvoice.info.
The state of Bitcoin mobile applications in the App Store and Google Play. After 7 months of availability, Apple has requested that we remove the ability to send Bitcoin from the glyph app. We have complied in our most recent release, Glyph for iOS 1.85. This blog entry focuses on the state of Bitcoin apps in the Apple App Store and Google Play, and what happened to Bitcoin sending in the Glyph app. What makes a Bitcoin mobile app? Well, most Bitcoin mobile apps include a mix of the following categories: news and information about the Bitcoin ecosystem, e.g. zero block; market information, exchange, price tickers, currency conversion, etc. Mobile wallet access, where a wallet is stored on the device, and native front-end controls to a cloud-based wallet, e.g. Glyph, Coinbase, or blockchain.info's apps. The most interesting mobile apps for Bitcoin are those that allow you to actually use the currency. Practical use of Bitcoin in mobile apps includes the ability to send and receive Bitcoin with QR codes, written wallet addresses, or other means, BTC transfer, and the ability to place buy and sell orders for Bitcoin, BTC trading. Why is it important for there to be useful Bitcoin apps? Bitcoin skeptics don't see the proof of work from mining as a good reason for there to be significant value in the currency. Instead, the focus is on whether Bitcoin has value because it is a generally accepted form of payment for goods and services. Since Bitcoin is electronic and many things need to be paid for on the go, the smartphone is the natural device for use of Bitcoin. This makes use of Bitcoin on a smartphone an important contributor to sustained value of Bitcoin as a currency. The Android and iOS mobile platforms are the most accessible and pervasive in the world today. It is possible to jailbreak iOS devices and sideload or root Android devices to run unauthorized apps. However, the vast majority of people download their apps from the App Store and Google Play. It stands to reason that if either Apple or Google block useful Bitcoin apps from their app marketplaces, they hinder the practical use of the currency and thus indirectly suppress the value of Bitcoin. Rules on Bitcoin in Google Play and the App Store. Google and Apple have similar policies with regard to what is allowed in their respective app stores, but completely different interpretation and enforcement of those rules. Neither Google's developer contact policy nor Apple's App Store review guidelines reference Bitcoin by name. The closest allusion is in Google Play's language about gambling, where it reads, "We don't allow content or services that facilitate online gambling, including games of skill that offer prizes of cash or other value." The term virtual currency in both Google and Apple's rules generally refers to the coins, gold, or gems that are used in mobile games like Clash of Clans. Despite Bitcoin's value outside a particular game or platform, the use of virtual currency is not intended to describe Bitcoin or similar alt currencies in either Apple or Google's policies. Without a clear rule against Bitcoin in either store, there is a broader rule for which Apple, but not Google, has been citing in its rejection of Bitcoin applications. Neither Google nor Apple allow apps that contain illegal or unlawful activity. Google's content policy on illegal activities says, "Keep it legal. Don't engage in unlawful activities on this product, such as the sale of prescription drugs without a prescription." Section 22.1 of Apple's review guidelines on legal requirements says, "Apps must comply with all legal requirements in any location where they are made available to users. It is the developer's obligation to understand and conform to all local laws." Given there are no clear rules on Bitcoin in either store, and that regulation of Bitcoin is still in its early stages, let's look at how Google and Apple are currently handling Bitcoin apps. Google's behavior toward Bitcoin apps in Google Play. Google Play offers a lot of leeway in what can be listed for easy download using the official Google Play app marketplace. Google has banned applications for reasons including sexually explicit material, copyright infringement, and facilitation of voided device warranties, but otherwise uses a fairly hands-off approach to curation of Google Play. Google's terms in the developer program touch on virtual currencies, but only within the context of a game and used for buying game content. As far as my research suggests, Google has yet to request the removal of Bitcoin functionality from an app or removed a Bitcoin app from Google Play. This has resulted in a proliferation of Bitcoin apps on their platform. This Bitcoin forum thread has a standing list of Bitcoin Android apps and widgets. Google chairman Eric Schmidt has gone on record saying, "Bitcoin is a technological tour de force. What I don't know is ultimately whether it is going to be legal." Google's continued allowance of Bitcoin applications in Google Play may suggest the assumption that the company believes it will be legal. Apple's behavior toward Bitcoin in the App Store. Developers have been trying to get native applications into the App Store with useful Bitcoin functionality since at least the summer of 2011. However, Apple has been fairly consistent in blocking or eventually removing apps that feature useful Bitcoin functionality. Apple uses two methods for preventing useful Bitcoin apps from living on iOS devices. By process, through normal review of submitted app, it is rejected and not allowed in the store. By exception, something causes Apple to re-review an application already released in the App Store and potentially remove it from sale. Some examples of Bitcoin apps that have appeared and subsequently removed from the App Store include Bitcoin Express, a thin wallet that used a server to track and download transactions involving its own wallet to the device, but not full blocks or headers. This app was submitted for approval and rejected. The developer posted the language in the rejection as follows: "We found that your app contains content related to Bitcoins or facilitates, enables, or encourages an activity that is not legal in the United States. That is not legal in all locations in which the app is available, which is not in compliance with the App Store review guidelines. We encourage you to review your app concept and evaluate whether you can incorporate different content and features that are in compliance with the guidelines. To appeal this review, please submit a request to the App Review Board." BitPack. A full Bitcoin wallet for iPhone debuted in December of 2011 and was removed from the sale in April of 2012. In a blog entry and forum post, "The Demise of BitPack," developer Rob Sama wrote, "About 3 weeks ago, I received a notification that BitPack, the first Bitcoin wallet for iOS, has been removed from the Apple App Store. I had not been given any reason why, just a simple electronic notification that it had been done. I was traveling at the time and did not have time to contact Apple to inquire about this. About a week later, someone from Apple called me on the phone and let me know that BitPack had been removed from the App Store. The guy on the phone sounded like a nervous teenager. I asked him why this had happened, and he said because that Bitcoin thing is not legal in all jurisdictions for which BitPack is for sale. I inquired as to which jurisdictions Bitcoin was deemed to be illegal in, and he told me, that is up to you to figure out. I asked him which laws Bitcoin violated, and again he replied, that is up to you to determine. I told the kid on the phone that he in fact had told me nothing and was most unhelpful. Blockchain.info. The app for the hybrid web and offline Bitcoin wallet has been rejected multiple times and has fluctuated in availability of useful Bitcoin features. One rejection note from Apple was posted by blockchain.info founder Ben Reeves. We found that your app contains content or facilitates, enables, or encourages an activity that is not legal in all locations in which the app is available, which is not in compliance with the App Store review guidelines. Specifically, the facilitation of trading of virtual currency is not appropriate for the App Store. We encourage you to review your app concept and evaluate whether you can incorporate different content and features that are in compliance with the guidelines. If you wish to appeal your review, you can submit a request to the App Review Board. The App Review Board was created for developers to appeal an app review they have concerns with. Please be as specific as possible as to when you're explaining why you believe your app is in compliance with App Store review guidelines. Coinbase. Coinbase has had 2 different iOS applications available in the App Store. Both have at one time had useful Bitcoin features, only to have them ultimately pulled from the store. But XYZ app with useful Bitcoin features is still in the App Store. How come? You may be aware of one or more apps in the App Store that still offer useful Bitcoin functionality. Why are those still available? While we still have our own guesses, we believe it is in the best interest of the Bitcoin community to avoid naming the remaining useful Bitcoin apps and speculating publicly on why these apps remain in the store. Given Apple's prior behavior, it is most likely a matter of time before they are removed. introduction to Glyph and its Bitcoin capability. If you're just tuning in, Glyph is an app for iPhone, Android, and the web that lets you connect and communicate with people privately. Our goal with Glyph is to make peer-to-peer transactions, like the ones you do on Craigslist, easier and more fun. This past spring, we embraced Bitcoin and built the ability to attach a Bitcoin wallet to your Glyph account. This meant you effortlessly send Bitcoin to other Glyph users. We did this because we believe Bitcoin will be a currency of choice for the future of peer-to-peer transactions. We released the Bitcoin functionality at Bitcoin 2013, and you can check demo video showing off the first version of Glyph on iOS with Bitcoin. At launch, we had also made these features available in Glyph's Android and web applications. We relocated the company from Portland, Oregon to incubate Glyph in Boost VC Startup Accelerator this summer. You can learn about our experience on episode 47 of Adam Levine's Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast. Glyph's Bitcoin releases on iOS. Glyph is unique in that it integrates with multiple cloud-based Bitcoin wallet providers rather than hosting wallets for users directly. This setup offers both user experience and business benefits. People on Glyph don't need to know which Bitcoin wallet provider the other person is using or handle wallet addresses. They just choose the amount and hit send. Glyph can focus on innovative user experiences rather than the technical and potential regulatory requirements of Bitcoin wallet hosting. Over 3 months at Boost VC, we did 8 iterative releases of Glyph on iOS that focused on enhancing its Bitcoin functionality. These changes included refinements of the Bitcoin wallet experience, instant Bitcoin wallet creation, support both for the blockchain.info and now defunct BIPS web wallets. With each release, we took care to be transparent about the useful Bitcoin functionality in the app. In fact, we believe that part of the reason Glyph was allowed in the App Store was because the app was clear in the description, update text, and screenshots about its capability. Getting rejected from the App Store. Bolstered in part by the appearance of 2 applications offering useful Bitcoin functionality in the App Store, we submitted version 1.85 of the Glyph app. This version included the ability to scan QR codes, making Glyph an easy way to pay at online checkout and at point of sale using QR codes from merchant solution providers like BitPay. The Glyph app was held in review longer than expected. Then we received a note saying the app needed additional review. A few days later, we received a phone call from Apple Worldwide Developer Relations, personally telling us that what we had added in version 1.85 was not going to be allowed. In addition, they notified us that we needed to resubmit an update to our prior version, 1.8, by December 3rd or risk having the app removed from the store. We were told we had an opportunity to appeal the decision, but that it would likely end up in the exact same place, though they indicated that Apple had changed rules in the previous year specifically in response to feedback from appeal letters. So we took the time to carefully explain what Glyph does, why we did not think it should be rejected or changed, and offered feedback to Apple on how it should handle Bitcoin. We drew particular attention to the fact that Glyph does not technically send or receive Bitcoin, but instead issues requests to web wallets for these operations on behalf of the user. While waiting for a response to our appeal, our app was unexpectedly removed from the sale on the morning of December 2nd. This was despite clear communication that we would have until the 3rd to submit an update. We received a phone call in the afternoon of the 3rd saying our appeal was denied. Asked why the app had been removed earlier than discussed, we were given a vague answer. I felt like the representative did not understand the difference between trading and transferring Bitcoin. These are significantly different things, especially with regard to potential future regulation. Yet, when you are a startup and independent software developer, you don't really have much leverage with Apple and how it handles the App Store. The best you can do is say, everyone makes mistakes, offer to resubmit the app immediately, and hope they change their mind on the matter. To that end, we've decided to share our appeal letter to Apple on why it should allow apps with useful Bitcoin functionality in the App Store. You can download a copy on our website. Is Apple anti-Bitcoin? Why? There is a prevailing belief in the Bitcoin community that Apple is against Bitcoin. While no one from Apple has gone on record to comment on the technology as a whole, we have plenty of evidence Apple is currently against offering useful Bitcoin apps to its customers. But why? Notable Bitcoin contributor John Matonis postulated this past June that Apple is suppressing Bitcoin apps to defend its entrance into the mobile payments. That's an interesting idea, but it relies on the fact that Apple actually began seeing Bitcoin as a serious threat to corporate strategy as early as 2.5 years ago. If you're to believe Apple's repeated rejection criteria of Section 22.1, you could take a view that the company currently believes the currency will ultimately be made illegal in the United States or other important markets, rather than be forced to remove apps once theoretical regulation comes into play, Apple is simply not allowing them to exist in the first place. This might sync up with Eric Schmidt's comment on Bitcoin, which was that he doesn't know if it will become a legal thing. If this is the most fundamental reason for allowing or disallowing Bitcoin apps in either store, it suggests an interesting perspective. Google allows useful Bitcoin apps because it optimistically believes the currency will become legal. Apple doesn't allow them because it pessimistically does not. Among other possible reasons, we wonder if Apple simply doesn't want to police useful Bitcoin apps in the App Store because they perceive the legal ambiguity of the currency as more trouble than it's worth. Bitcoin is still in an early adopter phase, and probably the majority of Apple's customers are unaware the currency exists and are not looking for these types of apps anyway. Better to avoid this type of software for now and take the option to change their mind in the future. What now for Glyph's Bitcoin ability? The native Glyph iOS app doesn't have the attach coins option in the conversation menu anymore. But it does let you create or connect an existing Bitcoin wallet, and you can view the balance. When you want to send Bitcoin, you'll need to jump to mobile Safari and use Glyph's mobile web application. While this is a solid workaround, we believe this reduces the quality of the user experience in the Glyph iOS app with regard to Bitcoin. And since heavy Bitcoin users with iOS devices will jump through these hoops, it simply hurts the otherwise seamless experience of using Bitcoin on Glyph with an Apple product. We continue to believe that there is immense opportunity in improving the peer-to-peer transaction experience and that Bitcoin will be an important part of this. You can expect Bitcoin to be an important aspect of the Glyph platform, with or without the express approval of Apple and the App Store.
Thanks for listening to episode 75 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Apple and Bitcoin was written, read, and recorded by Rob Benegali, edited by Adam B. Levine. Thanks to MediaBistro for putting on the Inside Bitcoins conference. The panel was recorded live at the event by the Coinsider This podcast at coinsiderthis.com. The panel featured Andreas M. Antonopoulos, Eric Benz, Robert Cho, Adam Ettinger, Izzy Klein, and Arden Lukosevic. Music was provided by Jared Rubens, Calvin Henderson, and Matthew Murkowski. Questions or comments? Email Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. Have a good one.